picking it up? Yeah, we're
Brennan
picking
started.
it up.
Yeah, we're live.
All right. Slight pause. And welcome to another episode of Chasing Wisdom podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the Constitution of the states. And I'm excited about that, but I am also feel very inadequate at the same time. We're going to start off today's podcast with a quiz. And these two guys basically are going to take a United States of America quiz because I did it yesterday, and I don't want to cheat. I will let y'all know that I only got one wrong, so I have high expectations for the two of you combined.
You should not.
Also, we'll let you know that there will be 4 possible answers to each question, and you'll have 30 seconds to answer each one.
How are we answering these, Brennan?
Consensus between
Consensus?
the two.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Ready?
Here we go.
Go.
How many members are you? Go ahead, Brennan. Reread it.
How many members are there in the U.S. Senate?
There's 2 for each state, right? So 100?
Yeah.
All right.
What is the American state with the fewest counties?
Read them out loud.
Utah, Rhode Island, Delaware, Maine. I think
Common sense.
Rhode Island.
Yeah, Rhode Island, smallest.
Oh.
Was Delaware? It's Delaware?
Yeah.
Why Delaware? Anyway, whatever.
Smaller.
Okay.
I thought Rhode
Really?
Island was the smallest state.
I think Delaware is smaller.
No,
Rhode
dude.
Island's the smallest
Rhode Island
state.
is the smallest state.
Okay, well, I got it right.
Shut up. No. Which American state has the most interstate highway kilometers?
Is Texas one of them? Okay, you read them out loud. New York.
New York, California, Texas, Montana.
Oh, man. It's either California or Texas. Which
Yeah.
one do you think?
I think Texas.
Let's go with Texas.
Yes. That's always a good answer.
How many stripes does the American flag have?
13, right?
No, that would...
I thought it was 13 stripes. Look, we got American flag right behind us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Okay, 13.
7 and 6.
Yeah, it was for the 13 colonies, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Well, yes, something like that.
something like that. Am I wrong about that?
It originally
No, you
was
go ahead.
the stars.
Oh, sorry.
No, which
Oh.
state did the United States purchase from Russia?
Common sense.
Alaska, right?
Yeah.
Or Oregon. Is it Oregon, Washington, Arizona, and Alaska? Okay.
Arizona.
How many states are there in the United States of America?
Dude, some people want to say 52. I know a person personally
Well,
that
we
thinks
have a
there's
couple.
52.
We have a couple of like Puerto Rico.
I was about to say Puerto Rico,
Yeah.
but it's not.
It's not a state.
But it's 50.
Yeah.
Which state was once called Deseret?
Deseret?
What does that sound like?
Desert.
What does Deseret sound like?
Utah. Wait.
So our options are California, Kansas, Alaska, or Utah. I don't think it's California.
I think it's Utah.
You can go with Utah. It's on me. Oh, yes.
Nailed it. Desert.
Yeah, makes sense.
Which state did Edward Kennedy represent as a U.S. Senator?
Who is Edward Kennedy?
I had no idea, but I got it right.
Let's say Massachusetts.
Oh.
Yeah.
Nice.
We got to read these answers. Okay.
What is the capital of the United States? Ottawa, Washington, D.C., Boston, or New York City?
I mean, that's obvious.
Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C.
Which of these is not an American national park?
It says Yosemite, Disneyland, Grand Canyon, or Yellowstone. Disneyland. Should be, though. 9 out of 10. Which one did you miss?
The first one.
Which
I just had a complete brain lapse.
Well, go to the first question.
and
What was it?
I picked 200 instead of 100.
This amount of
stupid.
senators.
Yeah, senators. Which one did y'all miss? Did it say?
They missed the second one.
The Rhode Island. Well, we chose Rhode
Yeah.
Island.
Counties.
Yeah, and I really, for some reason, I thought Delaware was smaller than Rhode Island, so I went with Delaware, and I got it right.
That's a good option.
That's not what I thought it would be.
The quiz?
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
That was
it wasn't
a
what I thought it
whole
would
lot
be
easier
either.
than I thought
Yeah,
it'd be.
it was just kind of
I thought it would
random.
be like
Why did it ask
founding
about that?
father stuff.
Yeah, me too.
Why go to the Kennedy question? Why did I ask about that Kennedy guy?
Look
Why-
him up.
Well, wait, it's got a little tidbit of information, doesn't it? Read it out
For
loud.
many years. Edward Kennedy represented Massachusetts as a U.S. Senator for many years until his death in 2009.
Well, I think he was related to the Kennedys, right? And he was like the last
Oh,
Kennedy involved in politics, maybe?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I was just wondering why him specifically.
I don't pay enough attention to this kind of stuff.
Okay.
All right. So what we're going to do next, because the Constitution is kind of a big document and complicated to understand. So Alex is going to give us a breakdown of the organization of the Constitution.
Okay, so I got this from. I'm just not realizing where I got this from. The dummies.com. So you know all those for dummies.
That's where we belong. Yeah.
Yeah. This fits us very well. So Article 1, which is where it basically starts and opens up, is the legislative branch. The principal mission of the legislative branch is to make laws. It is split into two different chambers, the House of Representatives and the Senate. Congress is the legislative body that holds the power to draft and to pass legislation, borrow money from the nation, declare war, and raise a military. It also has the power to check and balance the other two federal branches, which are what we're about to get to. So the two other federal branches are Article 2, the executive branch. This branch of government manages the day-to-day operations of the government through various federal departments and agencies, such as the Department of Treasury. At the head of this branch is the nationally elected President of the United States. The President swears the oath to faithfully execute the responsibilities as President and to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Its power includes making treaties with other nations, appointing federal judges and department of heads and ambassadors, and determining how to best run the country and military operations. So that's one of the two branches. The second one, which is in Article 3, the judicial branch. Article 3 outlines the powers of the federal court system, determines that the court of last resort is the Supreme Court, and the U.S. Congress has the power to determine the size and scope of those courts below it. All judges are appointed for life unless they resign due to bad behavior. Those facing charges are tried and judged by a jury of their peers. Article 4, which is the states. This article defines the relationship between the states and the federal government. The federal government guarantees a Republican form of government in each state, protects the nation and the people from foreign domestic violence, and determines how new states can join the Union. It also just suggests that all states are equal to each other and should respect each other and laws and judicial decisions made by other state court systems. Article 5, the amendments, which are, we have 27 amendments. The future generations can amend the Constitution if society so requires it. Both states and Congress have the power to initiate the amendment process. I guess we'll go into the amendments later on.
Yeah.
Because that's where, it's kind of where everything's changed from the Constitution. So that was 5. So number 6, debate, supremacy, and oaths. Article 6 determines that the U.S. Constitution and all laws made from it are the supreme law of the land, and all officials, whether members of the state legislature, Congress, judiciary, or executive, have to swear an oath of the Constitution. The last one is Article 7, ratification. This article details all the people who signed the Constitution representing the original 13 states. All right, there you go.
So that is the organization of the Constitution, if you were wondering or confused.
It's not as confusing now that it's been broken down for dummies.
Yeah, it's organized well. It's still not easy to read necessarily. And it was written a long time ago. Some of the languages.
That's what I was wondering. Is the language still the original language, or have they translated it?
Well, the things that are updated are written in a newer way,
Yeah.
but the old things are still, they haven't updated it.
Because that was the only reason I remember. I'm reading this book about Washington, and some of his writings and letters are really hard to understand, and I'm wondering if they've updated the Constitution from that type of English to a more readable English.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's something, and I'm going down the rabbit hole, but I remember there's a whole thing in law school that you have to learn how to translate old words from, because like let's say you had a law that was 150 years old, or a contract that's 150 years old, a word back then might not mean what it is today, and that can cause an issue with the law. So you have to be really careful when translating certain words over.
Right.
So,
and some words go obsolete, basically.
Yeah.
Right. Like the word mark is in here, M-A-R-Q-U-E, and I had to look that up.
What does it mean?
I didn't know what that mean. It was like today it kind of means more like a brand. So it's like a mark, like a logo or brand.
Okay.
But back then it would have been more of like a, probably more like a symbol of the state or something. So like if an official were receiving a gift from a foreign nation, and they like gave the gift, and it kind of had like the logo or the stamp of that state on it. Anyway, so there was like laws, regulations saying that you can't receive
Oh,
marks
okay.
from foreign nations, that kind of stuff. Anyhow, I do want to read the preamble of the Constitution. Everybody should be familiar with that. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. So what was the primary goal of the Constitution?
It was to give the government all the power, right?
Well, it starts off with we, the people of the United States. I do feel I'm going to make a political statement. We're probably going to make a lot of political statements today. I do feel that we have gone further and further and further into giving the government more and more power, kind of taking it away from the people. But we are still a democratic republic, at least in name. There's a few things in the first part of course, the first part of the Constitution here deals with the three branches, and I would just encourage you, if you've never read it, take some time maybe to go read it. It does take some discipline and some time to work through. There were a few things, though, that I highlighted that just kind of caught my attention as I was kind of skimming over it. I thought Section 8 was particularly, Section 8 under Article 1.
Mm-hmm.
The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. Basically, you're just getting into the power of Congress. If you want to know what power Congress has, what Congress can do, and I guess what they're responsible to do, then read Section 8. I just thought it was good because it clarifies particularly what Congress is in charge of. And I would like to, I know at least for me, because you hear about Congress doing this, doing that, the House and the Senate, and getting into this and getting into that and making those kind of decisions. And I may keep this handy for myself just to come back to and be like, hey, does this fall within their power? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm reading some of these where is it? I just lost it. To coin money, regulate the value therefore in foreign coin, and fix the standard of weights and measures.
Yeah.
Okay, one, it's funny, coin. We don't really use coins too often anymore, but
Yeah.
I get what they're saying. But
Right.
What is the fixed standards of weights and measures?
Well, used to coin, coin is just a currency.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it actually represented gold,
Mm-hmm.
which had to be weighed and measured. Right. But today our currency doesn't.
I guess. I don't know.
What does it represent now?
To provide and maintain a navy.
Well, and standards of weights and measures has to do with, what do you call it when you bring money from a foreign, and you exchange and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And beyond that, I'm not very well educated as it pertains to that kind of stuff. Some of the things I found down here, which are interesting, and I think that people would look at and say, well, maybe that's not too relevant today, but actually I think it probably is. To define and punish piracies and felonies committed on the high seas and offenses against the law of nations. I just thought it was interesting, like the language used there. But, that stuff still happens. To declare war, grant letters of marque, there's that word, marque, and reprisal, and make rules concerning captures on land and water. To raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money to that use shall be for a longer term than 2 years. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
To provide and maintain a navy. To make rules for the government and regulation of land and naval forces. As I was, one of the thoughts that I had as I was working through some of this stuff is that, one of the primary, really, I would say that the primary role of the federal government is military.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is really just to oversee and maintain
Military
and
money.
decide when our military should take action.
But the more I read, not only the military, but which we don't really talk like this, but the militia. And
Well, yeah, the militia, and that's kind of some discussion that I want to get into.
Yeah.
And we should probably get somebody who is more more educated. Maybe Brennan, maybe you know, but
I don't know.
when the Constitution or the amendments refer to militia, what are they talking about?
You know, and I don't even think we have a complete understanding of what they meant by militia because we weren't back in that
Right.
1800 time period when the militia was the army. If in a sense, like they didn't call it the army, but it what in the Revolutionary War, that's the bulk of what our army was state militias coming together.
Right. Well, and back then, you needed and this is kind of some of the stuff that I picked up on through reading some of this, is that you didn't have to have a large army all the time.
No.
Mm-hmm. You'd only needed it in the event that somebody invades.
Yeah.
You know, and so I mean, people had to have jobs. They had to farm, or they had to blacksmith, or do whatever. You know, and then in the event that somebody was invading or there was an uprising, then you would have to form your militia. People, you know, obviously, like the government probably didn't have enough money to pay a full-time military.
No.
You know, by any means.
Well, they had that problem in the beginning of the United States with Washington, that towards the end of it, that after the war was over, that they literally didn't have any money to pay their troops, their officers, any of them, and they were actually going to. The officers all banded together. I can't remember what it was called, but they all banded together to overthrow the government, and they elected Washington as the leader to do that.
Yeah.
And Washington gave this huge speech basically saying, like, condemning them, like, how dare you? Like, after all that we fought for, you want to now go overthrow your own government that you fought for. And he said, I don't know how we're going to pay for it, but we'll pay you.
Yeah.
And
that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, one thing that Washington also pushed for was, and a lot of people were nervous and scared about it, he pushed for a federalized military. That was the only thing he really pushed for a federal government, was for the power, was for a military, a standing military that is always there. And people were nervous because they thought, oh, he's going to be a tyrant. Yeah. You know, they're kind of worried about that
right.
You know, because that's all there was back then, was kings and tyrants, and
right.
And if you give that power of military to the government, then oh no, like so. But he didn't do it. He stepped down. That was kind of the beauty of George Washington, is that he had all this power. Everybody, if he said I want to be king, everybody would have said okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
You know why presidents only serve 2 terms? It's because George Washington.
He
led that example.
He could have been president for the rest of his living life, but he chose to only run 2 times.
Right.
Every president.
Well, I think those guys, you know, and
Almost
the founding fathers coming out from under the tyranny of Britain, and they just had a lot of insight, and knew what to protect us from moving into the future. I really think the founding fathers were geniuses. We could get further into that, and I think they designed an almost perfect government, but we've just kind of slipped away from it. And I also think, I'm just going to make a political statement here. I think that the progressiveness of today, it seems to me, they want to get away from the Constitution and what the founding fathers established. And I personally think it would be very detrimental to our nation to get away from it. Section 10.
That's what I was about to get at, was Section 10. So we're talking about, it seems like Congress, that's what they basically are there for, military and money.
Yeah.
Like that's the 2 powers that they really can control over.
Right.
Where is it? So Section 10 basically is talking about, it looks like, controlling what the states can and can't do when it comes to imports, exports, creating their own money, creating their own military outside of permission from the Congress.
Yeah.
So it kind of reminds me of, like, doesn't each state, we have our own
National Guard.
National Guard, thank you. So it's kind of given to us permission from Congress that we can create our own small little army to protect ourselves, but we can't. There's no state that has permission to create their own money. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think that's at where is that in here? I know it says no state shall consent without the consent of Congress lay any impose or duties or imports or exports except with maybe absolutely necessary for executing in its inspections of laws. So what I'm reading, like if we have tariffs on China, Texas can't go and say, I'm not going to go buy those and
Right.
start bringing in steel from China for no taxes.
Right.
Things like that. Keeps us as a unity, keeps us, because if half of our states are doing that and the other half aren't, well, there's not much leverage for the United States as a whole to, I don't want to use the word manipulate, but manipulate other countries to do what we need to do.
Right.
Right.
So, yeah, and I'd highlighted the last little section there under Section 10 is no state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, enter into any agreement or compact with another state or with a foreign power, or engage in war, unless actually invaded, or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay.
So this brings up a lot of questions for me.
Yeah, me too.
One, when was Article 10 written? Section 10, excuse me. So was this written in
There's some old language in here, so I would think that it was original.
Yeah, but is it written before or after the Civil War?
Before.
You think it's written before?
I would say.
First off, I don't even know what duty of tonnage. I don't even know what that really means. But my question is, okay, so no state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, enter any agreement of compact with any other state. So that's kind of what the Civil War was, the North versus the South.
Mm-hmm.
We all created our own armies. We all teamed up with each other and fought other states.
Right.
So I want to know if this was written before or after that. If whoever wrote this,
It was.
yeah.
This was written before the Civil War.
Okay.
Like way before the Civil War.
Okay. Interesting.
Except for
would have been about 100 years, close to 100 years. Huh?
Yeah.
Before the Civil War.
Yeah.
So and this is going back to my big question about militia, and we talked about it just a second ago. But because I still perceive when I hear the word militia, I think about the word militia. I still perceive that under an old, original sort of understanding of common men coming together, getting whatever weapons they can, pulling their rifles out of their wherever they kept them back then, out of their safes today, I guess, and forming a promptu military unit, I guess. At various sizes, I guess you could even say, and maybe a county or a parish in Louisiana, forming a militia and then joining together if necessary with other parishes or other counties, and kind of forming, that's kind of still how I think of it today. I mean, I don't, but I wonder if the language in the Constitution means more along the terms of what we have established as military. You understand my question?
So you're saying militia versus military, sort of?
Well, that's my question. When the Constitution says militia, are we referring to common men coming together to form, and I'm using the word impromptu. I don't know if that's accurate. But you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Or does it mean the already established organized military that exists? In other words, do we have the right to form a militia?
Where does it talk about that?
Well, it uses the word militia all throughout.
All throughout?
Yeah. And, of course, if we get to the Second Amendment, that's a big part of it.
I think it means more along the lines of a militia. Just because, like, if you go back to the Revolutionary War, like, these militias were already formed. They just kind of joined the military whenever they were called upon. And I think that's what, if we go back to Section 8, to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. So that kind of hints at, like, maybe the militia's already there. They can just come and be part of the constitutionally regulated military force whenever they're called upon.
Yeah, and it also says in the very bottom of Section 10, it says you can't have any ships of war, you can't have any keep troops or any, I don't know what duties of tonnage means, but whatever that means, you can't have any of that.
Can you look up tonnage?
Yeah.
I don't even know what that means.
But it says at the very end, with another state or with foreign power or engage in war unless actually invaded or in an imminent danger as will not admit of delay.
Right.
So
if we were under attack,
Yeah.
we would have the right,
yeah,
apart from Congress to form a militia.
Correct.
Yeah. But we can't do it if we're not being invaded or if there's not imminent danger without Congress's approval.
It says keep troops, and we'd have to look up what it meant by troops back then. What was the definition of troop? Is a troop a paid, salaried person every month that
No, I
shows
don't think
up?
it's referring to an individual. I think it's referring to, because back then a troop would be referred to as like a unit.
Okay, so they made that. My knowledge is that part of the Constitution came about because of a direct action by the British military, who during the Revolutionary War, the British military forced American citizens to keep British troops in their homes and feed them and kind of like let them stay there.
Yeah, that goes back to in some of the earlier, was it under Section 8 or Article 8?
It's 4.
4, yeah.
It's we don't have to keep troops in our home because
Right.
there's 4. Hold up 4 fingers. There's
that's
4
right.
walls.
Yeah, that's right.
It makes a house. You don't have to keep troops in
That's the
your house.
amendment. It's actually amendment number 4.
Yeah, amendment number 4.
Yeah, so we'll get to some of that.
I actually learned something from that video. So here's something I've got. It's kind of making me rethink all this. Section 10. It seems to take away a lot of the power from the state. So they don't have which I can't understand, but they don't have the right to make money, or their own money, or their own marks, or anything like that. They don't have the right to create new treaties with other foreign nations or entities, and they don't have the right to create an army, basically.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, understandably so, because otherwise it would not. You'd no longer be you would no longer
of
United States.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a union anymore.
Right.
It would just be
Right.
states against
You would
states.
be in practice. You would be seceding.
Yeah.
If you developed your own money, your own military, etc. Anybody got anything else there?
But I guess that
section?
doesn't. I guess
Yeah.
this is going to be a section or kind of transition. It doesn't take away from the actual state's ability to make their own laws, though. If that makes sense. Laws on, their own moral behavior, like abortion or something like that.
Yeah.
Except for the federal
we'd
government.
have to get into.
Except for when the federal government does intercede on their behalf.
Yeah, I'd have to look into what regulates all that between federal and state. I'm not sure. The next thing that I kind of highlighted and stood out to me is in Article 2, Section 1, pertains to the President of the United States. I just wanted to read the oath that the President takes. So I think this is very important. And this is when I think about electing a president, here's one of the things the process that I go through in my mind when I consider electing a president is, do I believe this person will uphold the oath that they are taking? Right? So the oath, it says this: before he enter on the execution of his office, he shall take the following oath or affirmation. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Right? So the primary thing that the President swears to do is preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. And so that's, for me personally, when I am looking at presidential candidates, the biggest question that I ask is this person going to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States? Because in my lifetime, I've looked at numerous presidential candidates and said, I just don't think that's what they're out to do. I don't think that that's the oath they want to make. Like, they'll make it just because it's a formality or something.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're really, in their heart of hearts, like, out to do that.
And you literally see clips out there of, we're going to take away their guns. I'm just like, that's
unconstitutional.
Even if it was something, even if it were something that, I agreed with that they're wanting to take away, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
It's against the Constitution. Yeah. It's just, if you're willing to do that, what else are you willing to do?
Right.
Like, you're just not following I don't know. It bothers me.
Yeah, me too.
I wish I could find something that wasn't something that I agreed on, like guns, like take away our guns. Like, I don't agree with that, so I'm going to argue with you on that principle. I wish I could think of something that I wouldn't mind them taking away. You know what I'm saying?
Something that we can get on the
On
other,
board, yeah,
other
like
side.
maybe taxes.
Well, let's just
or
say
something. I don't
drugs,
know.
like marijuana.
Okay.
Let's just say that the federal government, states, whatever decide, or whoever, I don't know what situation you want to put this in, they decide, like, hey, marijuana's been illegal.
Yeah,
But,
federally.
like, let's say they really crack down and, like, we want to take it away. We really want to do away with it.
Mhm.
Or I guess we could look at it from the perspective is it's becoming legal. So I think Colorado, California,
There's several. There's
Yeah, I
at
don't
least
several states
in the
where
teens.
it's been legalized.
In
right?
the teens, I'm
and
pretty
is that
sure.
even for recreational use?
Yeah. Yeah.
So even for recreational use. So let's just say the federal government flipped all of a sudden and said, "Hey, we're going to make it illegal in every single state."
Well, it is. The federal government it's still illegal.
Still illegal.
Yeah,
federal, according to
federally.
federal.
Yeah,
So,
the federal government can come in and
Yeah.
shut these shops down.
yeah.
And
Well,
a
that's
lot-
even true for CBD oil,
Yeah.
according to my wife.
I don't. Yeah, I didn't know that. But
okay, but in that sense, then the states don't have that right to make that legal, right? Because federal law
Supersedes.
oversees.
yeah,
state
and that's
law.
But they're
where-
letting them do it.
They're
They're
letting them
not-
do it. That's the whole point. Is that
Okay.
it's this big debacle of the state says they want to allow their citizens to do
Yeah.
it, but the federal government says no, you can't. So does the state have the right? Well, yes, they do because it's their own state, but the federal government oversees them.
All right. Well,
It's
let's
this
say
weird thing.
let's say this. Let's say alcohol then.
Okay.
Since marijuana's kind of back and forth, and some states are, and other states aren't, and federal says no. Let's just say that they decide to take away alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
What was the purpose of the question that you were asking? Well, I don't know if that's something you would want them to take away. It's not something I would necessarily want them to take away. But I'm trying to think of something that we would want them to take away. What do we want the government to take away? What would we think would be a good thing for the government to take away?
Well, maybe immigration law, some type of immigration law. I'm trying to think on that.
To take away immigration law?
Or to take away, we have very laxed immigration laws, or something like some welfare benefits of some sort. I'm trying to think of
I'm trying to
one.
come up with something I would want the
Do we
government. I would
really?
be okay
Do we
with.
love the government? Is that what we're getting at? We love the government, and everything that they stand for, man. We can't think of
Something
anything.
we want them.
We
I
just
don't
want
want
them. We
them-
want them to take away. We want to take away their power. We want to.
Take
want
away
them,
the government's power.
Yeah, the federal government, their ability to regulate so invasively. They can dig down really deep where I think it should be the state's ability to.
I would like to see the government have no involvement with marriage.
Hallelujah.
So what would it look like? Explain that.
You don't have to get a license. No state license.
No state license. So anyone.
Government is completely uninvolved in marriage.
So
right?
state
And
or
so
federal?
paying taxes and all that has nothing to do with marriage.
So state or federal.
Well, it's state. I don't think. Well, I guess the federal does take taxes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They probably regulate it through the state. But I mean, you don't have to have like a federal license to get married. You just have to have a state license. But I guess the federal government runs that through the state. I don't know.
So why do you think that there are? So what do you want to get rid of? You want it just anyone can marry anyone on any behalf without any.
For me personally, it comes down to what is marriage.
Yeah.
Right. Like, yeah, I don't think that the. So we're kind of going back, I guess, to Obama legalizing, or the Obama administration legalizing homosexual marriage. Like, for me personally, that's not marriage.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't view it as. I view marriage as a man and a woman uniting themselves together under God.
Yeah. I'm not going to disagree with that. I'm just
Yeah.
going to stir the pot a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
That's what I agree with. But at the same time, it is America, and is the Constitution written for the rights of every person to do what they, in a sense, what they want when it comes to marriage.
Well, and that's kind of what I mean. Like, look, if you're homosexual and you want to, quote unquote, get married,
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yeah.
I don't, I mean, if it's going to be voted on, and we're going to run it through the government, and the government's going to be involved, then I'm going to go vote one
Yeah.
way or the other. I'm going to go vote my conscience. But I would rather that the government just not be involved in that.
So I think one thing that I agree.
Like,
And I don't
the
really
question
think
we have to ask is, why is the government involved in marriage?
To make money.
to make money. That's what I was about to get
To
at.
make
is
money.
I don't think it's a moral issue. I think it's a money issue.
To
on that
make
part.
money and to control people.
Yes. If they,
Because when you sign, here's some of the stuff that I read, and maybe I'm crazy, but it made sense to me. When you sign an agreement with the state, the state now oversees your marriage, basically, right? Because what you're doing is you're getting permission from the state to get married. You're getting permission from the government. When you give permission to the government now basically owns your marriage. If you have to get permission from someone to do something, that means they own you, right? So when you go get divorced, guess who gets to oversee your divorce?
The government.
The government. They can step in and they can say, no, he's going to get this, she's going to get that. You don't get to decide between yourselves we get to decide because you got our permission to get married in the first place.
See but I view it in two separate ways. One is a moral and a ideological way, and then a legal way.
Yeah.
So the legal way, I understand how the government can control you for tax purposes, for just filling out your whatever, getting insurance for your car, your house, taking out a loan. You have to have permission from the government. I understand why they want to track that. I understand why they legalized gay marriage. I understand why they don't legalize marriage for multiple people getting married, because that would just make it a big dilemma. There's a lot of fraudulent things you could do with being married to 8 people.
Yeah.
So I understand that portion of it, but the ideological aspect of it and the moral aspect of it is, I don't care if the government gives me permission. If I want to marry Whitley and I want to be married to them, I don't care what they say. If we can't share taxes, if we can't take out a loan together, I don't care. It's between me and God and Whitley. It's
Right.
between us 3.
Right.
If me and Whitley commit ourselves, we have a preacher, just another witness to marry us, and we're made a covenant between us and God, then we're married. I don't care if the government says no, you can't.
Yeah.
Doesn't bother me. That's my 2 takes on it.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me that the government says that homosexuals can get married. It doesn't bother me on that aspect. I get what you're saying, that they control you, but I don't think they control everything about your marriage. In that aspect,
No,
yeah.
obviously not. But according to what I read, and the reason that the government state you have to go get permission from the state if you want to have a legal marriage, right? Is that they basically kind of become owners. Like, you don't realize it, and they don't always step in and take ownership. But if a situation arose,
Yeah.
they could.
Yeah, and
I think they could come in and say, "No, we're not going to let you do that."
Yeah, I think that's what you're trying to get to, is that they, just because they have right now they're on the good spectrum, they're allowing people to get married. They're not being too biased about it. They're letting just about anyone get married. Cool, that's good. That's all thumbs up. But on the other spectrum, if they have that power, they can also do the exact opposite. Okay, we now have a diversity law. Well, we want 25% of people to be in I'm just throwing out some weird Black Mirror style scenarios where it's like, okay, we need 25% of people to be diversified. So you just drew the short straw. So now you have to be in an interracial couple, and you have to marry. I'm white, so you have to marry a Black person. And the government could force that, or you can't get married. I mean, just something crazy like that. If they have the power to grant marriage, they have the power to take it away. I know that's kind of a weird scenario.
No, but that's kind of the point.
That's the point, and that's where I go back to. If they have that power, they can also do a lot of. People think, well, I don't care. I think I'd still be married to Willie, no matter what. Even if they told me I couldn't, but they could also limit you on what you can do.
Yeah.
And you say, oh, they would never do that. Go look at China. China's government does that. They limit you on your children.
You only have one kid.
Yeah. They have a social program to where they literally have a social hierarchy ranked where if you are below a threshold, you can't take buses, trains, planes, you can't get a license, and you have to then prove that you're a good citizen by either paying tax, like paying off your penalties, which is a lot of money, or doing community service. I mean, it's crazy.
It's communism. It's tyranny.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to avoid.
It's exactly what we're trying to avoid. That's why we have a constitution, and it's why we need to not get away from the Constitution.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Okay.
Does the Constitution say anything about marriage?
That's a good question.
Yeah, it does. Let me find that list real quick. It's I don't know if it's directly in one of the articles. I think it's gonna be in the amendments. 1 second. You can continue on.
I think I did read something in there as I was sifting through it, but it didn't stand out to me for one reason or the other. As y'all are looking that up, I highlighted something else here, section 4. I guess I'm just going to read it and figure out why I highlighted it. The President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Oh, obviously I highlighted this because we're in the middle of an impeachment hearing in the Senate with President Trump. And, I think the big question here is, has he committed a impeachable offense?
As of right now, I don't think so, but also I'm biased.
Yeah.
But that's why we're having a trial, and that's what we're waiting to hear I mean, I don't see enough evidence to point to it.
Yeah.
Or at least from my little bit of,
Yeah.
podcasting that I listen to and news things that I read, that so far, no, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And we have a Republican-controlled Senate right now. So, in my opinion,
They're going to lean in his direction.
they're going to lean in his direction. But if he is convicted, and the Senate does say that he needs to be impeached, then I would have to lean towards, okay, he did do something. And I'm not gonna, that's my quick and easy answer, that if Republicans vote Trump out, then he must have done something really bad.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to read through all this, and it seems like it's very legalistic. Like, what was it? What is he being accused of?
So he had a conversation, or Rudy Giuliani, somebody had a conversation with
Ukraine.
the president of Ukraine.
Yeah.
And they threatened to withhold funds,
Military funds,
if they did not investigate Joe Biden's
son
for
being on that energy company.
Yeah, and basically making a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the takeaway, I think, is Trump trying to get dirt on Biden.
He's using, or the Trump is using government money to benefit withholding of it to benefit his own political career
for the next election.
For the next election is what they're going for, which that's the accusation.
That's the accusation, right?
So that's what I'm trying to figure out, is they're getting in the weeds of all these legalistic terms, and I can't go past what we just said. I can't read into it any more than what you and I've just said.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's because there's
and
nothing
is that
else.
just the way it's being portrayed to us?
Yeah. That's my whole point. Is it really that much more confusing than that, or is it really that simple and there's nothing really else there?
Right. I know Brennon's got it.
Okay. I don't have a complete understanding of the situation. I don't think any one of us has full understanding. But if there's a possibility, if there is something shady going on with Joe Biden's son and the Ukrainian government, like, is it wrong for them to be investigating that?
No.
Like, I don't think it is.
Absolutely not. I don't even think it'd be wrong for them to be prompted by the United States government,
exactly,
or the president,
or
the president's lawyer.
I wish I had this article. A lot of people are viewing what Trump did in Ukraine with this phone call as a timeline of, it started at 1, Trump calling him, and ended at 2, getting information about Joe Biden. When in reality, so I read this article that this reporter wrote up about everything that led up to that, and it was like a year of stuff that had happened that made Trump get to that phone call. And it really, like, once you realize that, it's like, oh, Trump wasn't doing this for any insider information to use for his election. He was literally doing this because he was trying to investigate something.
Yeah.
And when you know that, and it was from a Democrat or a left-leaning news source, and they were kind of surprised when they found out this information. They're trying to be as biased as possible. When I heard that, I was like, that's incredible reporting, and I wish I had it with me, because when I heard it, I was blown away by it.
But here's one thing I don't understand. I guess it's just a little rant about the left. But how is the left going to, after Trump made one phone call to the Ukrainian government, they're going to stand on the complete opposite side of Trump, but it's also on the same side as Joe Biden's son, who is working in complete cooperation with the Ukrainian government.
Yeah.
Like, how does that... Yeah. That just doesn't register in my mind at all.
Well, one's a citizen and one's a president.
True.
He's not necessarily doing any... Joe Biden's son's not... I don't think he's necessarily doing anything wrong. Now, Joe himself could have been doing something wrong when he was vice president to put his son in that position, because he's using his political influence. And I think that's kind of like the catch-22 that you're trying to get after. But Joe's son, Hunter... Yeah, he's not necessarily doing anything wrong by being on that board. At least I don't think he is.
Yeah.
It is funny that he's on the. I mean, it raises eyebrows that he's getting paid $500,000 to be on this board, and he's not an electrical engineer. He doesn't know anything about the stuff.
It just makes you wonder if the left is really just against the Ukrainian government, or if they're just against Trump.
No, I think they're against Trump.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think it's very, to me, the entire impeachment to me is just a political move. Mm-hmm. They, in my opinion, they are afraid that Trump's going to get reelected, and the only way they can see themselves getting out from underneath a Trump presidency is to get him impeached. He's already actually been impeached, but whether or not it goes through.
What they need to do. So this is the exact same thing that the Republicans did back when it was Obama versus Mitt Romney. Was he the Mormon Mitt Romney?
Yeah.
So we're in the exact same boat. We were trying to impeach Obama, and we didn't really have a strong candidate to run against Obama. We had Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
And so we were just pushing and pushing and pushing for impeachment, knowing that we have a weak candidate. And I think that's what the Democrats are doing right now. They have Elizabeth Warren, they have Joe Biden, and Creepy Joe, and Bernie Sanders. So they have a really weak.
Yeah, they don't have anybody.
Yeah, they have a very weak. I think Joe is leading in almost all polls.
Yeah.
And it's not by much, but I think that's what they're doing. It's the same thing that we did back, whatever. And we might have had better impeachable offenses against Obama. I don't know, but I think that they're grasping at straws, trying to do something.
Well, and that's another thing. Nobody tried to impeach Obama, right?
I thought they did. I don't know if I don't think no. Let me restate that we didn't file any articles of impeachment like they have done against Trump, but there were
probably some politicians that wanted to.
Yeah, that was there was all of our conservative outlets were pushing for that ideology of let's impeach Obama. He's done all these terrible offenses, trying to smear his name.
Yeah.
And he might have done some bad things. I can't really remember. That was
We made numerous executive orders that were I think inappropriate and unconstitutional. And I think he, the supposed millions of dollars that he sent to Iran. To me that would be if anything impeachable. But to me it just speaks to. Because I don't think Trump has done anything that would warrant impeachment any more than Obama did.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's just, to me, it's the difference between and here's the thing. I want to make this very clear. I think that the majority of the government and politicians are corrupt on both sides, Republican and Democrat. Yeah. But to me, the corruption of the Democrats is like absurd. Like because I would never say that there's not some corruption on the Republican side. I think there's guys in there that are for money and power.
Oh yeah,
and they're going to do whatever. But to me, man, like you just look at the things that have happened, like Epstein and the Clintons. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, Benghazi.
It's really crazy. Benghazi. I mean, dude, the stuff is so far out there. It's like how can we not see the corruption that's over there on the left?
Oh man, did you listen to the Snowden podcast?
Yes.
Like just that. If anyone doesn't know what we're talking about, pause our podcast. It's not nearly as good as what we're about to tell you. Go to Joe Rogan, listen to the Snowden podcast. It is 3 hours long, and it's the best 3-hour podcast I've ever listened to. And this is all going through trial, through court, through the U.S. court, it's been documented. There's case studies about it, and happened back in 2002, 2004, or something like that. 2002, it was right after 9. It started after 9/11.
Right. This would be corruption on the Republican side
about Dick Cheney and Bush. Well, mostly Dick Cheney. I think it was mostly Dick Cheney. But it was horrible corruption on leaking, or basically viewing into the privacy of American citizens.
They just stripped us of our rights to privacy.
We should really do a whole podcast just on that one topic, because I can talk for hours about it. But and we might get to it a little bit later on. But you need to go watch that if you're ever concerned about. I'm not sure if the government's corrupt or not. You need to go watch that, and your eyes will be open.
Yeah, and I agree with you. At the same time, I understand. Well, when you get into that type of power, where you're the vice president. Well, and I think Cheney, more than any vice president ever before, probably had more power than any other vice president. I understand their motives.
Yeah, if you go back and listen, and you got to understand, this is at the time and after the time of 9/11, so I think our government was kind of just in a political daze about what to do, and so it was kind of like, let's just crack down on everybody, and it sounded like a good idea, but in reality, it's kind of an invasion on.
Well, and my question for that particular situation is, was it something that they wanted to do, that the government kind of wanted to do? Like, hey, we want to be more, we want to take the rights of our people away, their privacy, because we really want to know what's going on in the American people's lives. Or, it's like, was that their motive, or was their motive like, hey, we really need to stop attacks?
No, listen, buddy, I'm about to. So what he's talking about is when Dick Cheney. So I have to explain it, otherwise my answer is not going to make sense.
Yeah.
So they came out with a program that allowed the government to view into every citizen's phone calls, emails, basically any information that you have. Because this is at the kind of the birth, or I wouldn't say the birth, but the pinnacle of when the internet really was taken off and data was starting to be collected at a massive amount.
Right.
So the government, Dick Cheney and a few other senators, congresspeople, and just they made a program. I think it was like Star something. I can't remember what it was called. That allowed them to gather this information and use it by the CIA and the FBI to look into people's lives. So the question is, what was your question? Were they doing it for one of two reasons? One, to actually protect America, or two, to gain power.
Yeah.
So you have to ask the question of how did they go about implementing and doing this program? So we have ways of going about putting this program legally, going through Congress, going through Senate, going through all the judicial branches to submit this. And in wartime, there's actually a process to speed that up.
Right.
And we could have done it very quickly. But that's not what they did. They didn't do it legally. What they did is they went behind everyone's back. They implemented the program, and nobody knew about it. Absolutely no one knew about it. And Dick Cheney and a couple other people, I think it was like six or seven, that started it. What they did is they even did more corrupt things of bringing in other congressmen, bringing in other senators and telling them about the program, getting them on board. And then once they were on board, they blackmailed them in an essence of, hey, if this ever gets leaked and you turn on us, well, now you're a part of it, and you're the problem now too.
Yeah, we're gonna expose you.
Yeah, we're gonna expose you. So this is obviously a quick and dirty of it, but the person Snowden. So before I even listened to this podcast, I've always heard of Snowden as like, oh, dude, he betrayed America. I can't stand this dude. But after listening to it, I don't want to call him a hero, but he did a very good thing by exposing it. So he leaked all this information because he was in a position in the IT world that allowed him to gather all this information that saw what was going on. And so to answer the question, I don't think that these government officials, Dick Cheney, Bush knew about it. It went into the Obama era. Obama had Obama had it just as long. He had the ability to abolish it.
Right.
He didn't. He kept it. This was before it was exposed. He kept it all. And that's the whole point, is that they had it. And they chose to, or they had the idea and they chose to do it illegally. They chose to do it without the people's permission, without us even knowing about it.
Right.
And that is not because they were trying to protect America. They were doing it to get power.
Yeah.
But you know what? Here's another interesting thing. I don't even think it's just the government anymore. I think there are plenty of private businesses, and I'll use one as an example, and I have a story to tell about it. So CenturyLink, back whenever I was in, like, I want to say 7th grade, we were in like career class or whatever, and this guy from CenturyLink came in, and he started talking, and I don't know how it led up to this, but he specifically told us that we have pretty much every single bit of information that comes from and to your phone. So we have like anything that you send out or receive, we have it, and we can look at it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's even more than invasion than the government, because you're a private business.
I have seriously contemplated going back to a flip phone.
Yeah.
Just getting rid of a smartphone, man.
You know, and I've recently gotten rid of Instagram, and I'm probably about to get rid of Facebook, just because, like, I for one, I don't see the need for it anyways, and I think it creates a lot of problems.
So you're talking
even just in the personal psyche.
Yeah.
So you're talking about like the private businesses collecting that information. Well, that's what the federal government was doing.
That's what they tapped into. They went to AT&T particularly, right?
Yeah, they were seizing all this information, so you can warrant to seize the information, basically.
Yeah.
Well, they basically created the project that they did removed that step of going to a judge and saying they could just say, hey, we want this information, you have to give it to us, and then AT&T, whoever else would just have to forfeit that
but now this
information.
even goes back further into how did the private businesses get the right to do that?
Well, we sign away our rights when we use their products and their services, and I'm okay with
the
that.
Terms and conditions.
I'm 100% okay. That's capitalism, and it now. I'm okay with it because now it's creating avenues of good companies that are going to use policies and procedures that protect our rights, like DuckDuckGo. I don't know too much about it, but I know that I use it for the fact that they don't store or collect your information. They don't sell it. That's what they stand by. And if it ever gets leaked that they're not doing that, well, then their whole business policy or their whole business idea crashes.
And they go down.
They go down. what I think is unfair is that we were out, you and I, and you a little bit, we were at the birth of the internet.
Yeah.
When they started
I was
collecting
13,
information.
Yeah.
So we didn't know what the internet was going to be about. We didn't know what it could turn into, how it could be used for good or bad.
Right.
And knowing now how much information they store, collect, and how they use it, I would never have signed up for Facebook. I never would have signed up for Instagram. I never would have created all these accounts, put all this information out there. And I wish there was a way to wash the internet. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Whatever you've done,
yeah,
it's
there.
there. It's there.
For
Whatever
forever.
you've Googled, whatever, it's all there. By the way, when you listen to that podcast, if you do, your cell phone may never be turned off, even if you turn it off. Might not be off.
Siri's always listening.
It's always listening.
But really, though, like, and this has been happening to me more recently, but, like, the whole thing about talking about something and then an ad popping up for it, like, that's legit. Like, it's listening to you, and it will circulate ads.
I listened to a thing. I watched a video on YouTube where it was this guy talking about, it's just really good algorithms.
That's bullcrap.
I don't buy it, man. I don't buy it.
Complete
Because
bullcrap.
I will be on a computer over here, and I'll Google something, and I pull up my Facebook on my phone a minute later, and there's an ad for what I Googled. I'm like, come on, dude, that's not an algorithm.
No, man. I legit say things.
That's a direct connection.
Not even with my phone. Not even on my phone.
Yeah, just say something in conversation
I say
with somebody.
something in conversation, and it pops up.
Yep.
I'm like, I'm about
That's
to
not just an algorithm.
throw my phone in the river.
That's not an algorithm guessing what you're looking for.
Nah.
Okay. All right. Shall we move on?
Yep.
What are we looking like on time?
56.
Okay. So let's pick a couple of amendments. I mean, obviously, the Second Amendment is a very hot topic right now, and Virginia's got some crazy stuff going on. What were we going to say?
So, no, I was just saying, so what are the amendments in? What article? Just for fun fact, so we can kind of learn something while we're doing this. 5. The amendments, the
Article
27,
5.
the 27 amendments are in Article 5.
It's good to know.
Just a little tidbit of information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. What are I mentioned the Second Amendment. What are some amendments that stand out to you guys as like hot topics?
You want me to read the amendments real quick? I got a quick little list of them if you want me to.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, the First Amendment is the freedom of religion and speech. Second, the right to bear arms. Third, no quartering of soldiers, which is what we were talking about. Fourth, protect. Wait, this is. No, yeah, that's right. Protection against illegal search and seizure, which is number 4. Number 5 is protection against self-incrimination. You can plead the fifth. 6 is right to speedy and public trial. 7 is right to trial by jury in common law cases. 8 is protection against cruel and unusual punishment, no excessive bail imposed. 9, the enumeration of rights in the Constitution won't be used against the people. Number 10, reserved power to the states. Number 11, states are protected from being sued by other citizens of another state. 12, separated balloting procedures for president and vice president. So that's the number 12 or 12th Amendment is just the way that we elect the president and vice president. Number 13 is abolish of slavery. Number 14 is granted form slave citizenship, equal protection, establishment of principles, and selective incorporation. Number 15, African American men could vote. I'm going to say that again. African American men could vote. So I found, is this all chronological? I would assume these are chronological.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 16, establishment of federal income tax, which is boo. Number 17, direct election of the U.S. senators, which just means it's a popular vote, so it's just an easier way of electing senators. 18, prohibition. So 18 is to get rid of the prohibition of alcohol. No, was 18 is the prohibition of alcohol, right? That made it illegal.
We can read it.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah.
get to it.
19, women have 19 women have the right to vote. So it took a little while to get that there. 20th Amendment, president and vice president term of office begins on January 20th and no longer in March. 21st, repeal of prohibition. Oh yeah, so the 21st Amendment is the removal of the prohibition. So alcohol is now legal at 21. So the 21st Amendment, you're 21, you can drink. 21st Amendment means that's when they removed the alcohol. 22nd Amendment, presidents limited to 2 terms. 23rd Amendment, the D.C. given presidential electors, so the Electoral College, I think is what that's talking about. 24th, poll tax is illegal. I don't know what that is. 25th Amendment established VP as a successor of president is unable to serve. So the 25th Amendment is just the succession of the president, how that works. 26 is 18-year-olds have the right to vote. 27 is congressional pay raises will only take effect after the next election. So that's our 27 amendments.
Gotcha. So before 1965, with the vice president becoming the president, who became president
After?
before?
Wait, say that again?
So we didn't in 25. Amendment 25 is where we put the vice president upon the death or resignation or whatever removal of the president, the vice president becomes president. Who became president before that if the president was removed or assassinated or whatever?
Okay, is that
I don't know.
maybe that's just like stating that?
It's just putting it in.
Yeah, because I think it probably
Putting
was
ink
the
on
vice
paper.
president.
Yeah. Well, that's
Wait,
what I
when
thought
was
it
this?
was
When was that
just-
written?
1965.
So what happened when Lincoln died? Who took over?
That's why I'm asking. One of the reasons I'm asking.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And
like
it
Brennan
might-
said, it was
And I
probably
think it
just,
did fall back onto the vice president. It
It's just was never
kind
on
of-
paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got you. I get what you're
That's
saying.
probably the case. I like to look into it though. All
Yeah.
right, so let's get into the Second Amendment. I mean, it's the hottest topic right now. A well-regulated militia, and this is one of the big reasons I'm asking. What does militia mean? Right? A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, comma. I have a lot of questions about the way it's written too.
Yeah.
So let me go back.
Where are you, real quick? What page?
Amendment 2, page 11.
Okay.
A well-regulated militia, comma, being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, comma, shall not be infringed.
Okay, so I think that's breaking it up. So I think it's saying the right to have a militia, if necessary.
Well, the third word, a well-regulated
Yeah.
militia. So
Exactly.
regulated by whom?
Congress, because that's who regulates it. Remember?
Is it?
That's who says you
Yeah.
can have it.
Okay.
In
That's what we read earlier.
Article 8.
Yeah, I think so.
8 or 10, something
10.
like that.
I think it was Article 8, Second, or something like
That's
that.
fine. Yeah.
But so I think that's kind of saying the right to have, because if you read the Bill of Rights, it's not the government giving us rights. It's the government saying we cannot take away these rights.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is just stating that they cannot take away a well-regulated militia that has complete, full authority, in sense, to be formed and kept. And then it's also saying that and this kind of coincides with that militia in a sense, but we don't really talk in terms like that anymore. But it does say the people. You cannot infringe the rights of the people to keep and bear arms.
Yeah, that's kind of how I see it as well. Is that you can't take away the right for in the event of an invasion or imminent danger, you can't take away the right for a state to have a militia. And then 2, you cannot take away the right of the people to keep and bear arms. And so, because how are you going to form a militia if the people don't have arms?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think because what people argument that I think I've heard from the other side is, well, we can take away guns because
It's only talking
about
militia.
military,
Yeah.
and the military has the right to have arms, but not the people. And I just think that's a
misinterpretation.
I'm just playing devil's advocate. I could also see someone interpreting it a well-regulated militia, so it's regulated by Congress, being necessary to the security of a free state. Well, they could easily say, "Well, you're secure. We have the federal government.
we
We have the federal army,
military,
We
yeah.
have, So
okay,
why?
then that's where I think the next part comes in, where it says the right of the people, not necessarily a militia.
Yeah,
but the right of
exactly.
the people to keep and bear arms.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You could make the argument that a militia is made up by people,
people.
the
Yeah,
right of the people
exactly.
having those
Yeah.
arms. But if you don't need a militia, then the people don't need guns. I don't agree with that. I'm
Yeah.
just saying I see how people can view this text in multiple facets.
Yeah.
right,
You have to stretch it, but
right,
take it as you shouldn't read between the lines on this.
yeah,
It's very straightforward.
right.
Exactly.
Here's the other thing that, since we're just going to get into it and being political here, that what do they use as like the banner or the poster child, if you will, to say we need to take away guns?
Man, your AR-15. Or is that what you're getting at?
Well,
I
sorta.
think they use what criminals do.
Gun
with them,
violence
yeah,
and
gun
mass
violence.
shootings.
Yeah.
Right? Look, man, people have been doing bad things to people.
A long time. They did it way before guns.
I mean, if you believe that God created everything and it all started with Adam and Eve, man, Cain killed Abel
The rock.
with a rock or something. Does it say it specifically?
Yeah, I think.
I think so.
So
Man, people are going to kill people
yeah, no
if
matter
they
what.
have guns or they don't have guns. And here's my biggest thing, man. I do not understand what people do not understand about this. If you implement gun laws that take away guns from people, do you not understand that bad people don't care about that?
Yeah.
That's why they're bad
Exactly.
people.
Here's another thing I don't understand. We have had so many cases, and I'll use the most recent one with the shooting in the church in Texas. Like,
Yeah.
that could have been
Oh, it could have been so bad.
one of the biggest shootings of this year,
Yep.
or possibly the last decade. But there was about 6 people in that church, and there was one really trained dude in that church who one-shotted him in the head in under 6 seconds.
Did you see that? Did you watch that?
Yeah,
video?
yeah.
Under 6 seconds, and that's how long it took. The guy was only able to kill 2 people.
Yeah.
Instead of that whole 100 in that church, which I don't know the exact
I think there
number.
were 200
200
people in the
exactly.
church. And I think they said, I don't know this for a fact, but I think they said he had other weapons and other ammunition.
I was gonna say he only had a shotgun, so
Yeah,
That's the only thing that you saw.
yeah. But if he had
But I
sidearms,
think
were
they said
saying-
he
but
had
I just don't
other-
understand how people can't look at the hard evidence that whenever there's not good people with guns there, a
More
lot of
people
people die.
More people
But
die.
whenever there is good people with guns there, less people die.
Yeah.
I also like that they're pushing to take away ARs because that's where gun crimes happen. But statistically,
Yeah, it's not.
it's not. It's handguns that are like the number
Yeah.
one
Handguns
cause.
kill more people. It's just not mass shootings.
Yeah, and it's
Right.
it's funny. It's like why would the government want to take away ARs? What would fight a government?
Right.
ARs. Like if there
exactly,
were an
right.
actual rebellion or an actual like the AR is what you would take into an actual fight,
Yeah.
not a handgun.
Right.
And I think that's a big push for
Yeah.
for that.
But here's the thing:
Semi-automatic.
have our rights already been infringed because citizens can't have what the government has, as far as
Yeah, we can't have
guns.
tanks.
We can't have tanks.
Or
Well, I think that's
F-35s.
well, I don't think that, but that's in the Constitution. In Section 10, we're reading you can't have ships of war. Back then they didn't
Okay,
have
yeah,
tanks,
that's
but
true.
the only thing, the big arsenal that they had was a ship with cannonballs.
But
cannons on it.
do you know where the naval ships came from? That they used
No.
back in the day? They came from people.
Private sector.
Yeah. People that had those ships before, the military just came in and
Well, all of
Bought
our
them
stuff
or used
today,
them.
our tanks, our fighter jets, everything is private sector.
Yeah.
It's who makes it.
Yeah, but
the
you can't-
government
but-
contracts it out to buy it from
yeah,
them.
but you can't. A private citizen can't own it.
exactly, and that's what I was getting at. Like, have our rights already been
Are
infringed?
there? I don't. I mean, if you had enough money to go buy an F-35 from whoever makes it,
No, but I don't think
But
you
could
can.
you go?
you
Could
could
you
buy
go buy one?
Well, you can buy a tank. Arnold Schwarzenegger has a tank. He just can't buy the ammunition for it. Like you have to have certain
But
licenses.
You probably have to
exactly,
have.
though.
Yeah.
You have to have certain licenses to like to.
So that's
to
our
buy
rights being infringed, is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
that
I don't disagree.
I mean,
I don't know.
to an extent. I mean, I understand how.
I don't know if I want everybody out there having a tank.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I think to an extent, like that needs to be regulated as far as heavy munitions like that, because
Yeah.
I think there's a lot there people back in the day when everybody had a cannon or whatever, or had the ability to have a cannon.
Everybody gets a cannon.
But I think people in general
It was a
were
lot harder to move a cannon back then.
true.
Yeah.
But
You had to hook it up to your horse.
in general, I just think people had a lot better moral code
Well, yeah,
back in that day.
definitely. There was a higher moral code. There was something else that I would just like to have a discussion about. We don't have to do it right now, but is that, man, there just used to be honor and respect. In the way that even militaries would fight with respect. Like, they didn't fight dirty. You know what I'm saying? But everything's so dirty now.
I don't
Anyways.
know. In the book that I'm reading about Washington and some of their fighting, they actually started targeting
Some guerrilla warfare. And
Yeah, and they started targeting officers, which was back
oh well,
then.
that's just
Okay,
tactical.
but that's just
Well, no.
strategic.
Back then, that was taboo. You weren't supposed
Oh,
to
you weren't supposed
target officers. Officers were, of higher class. They were educated. They were of asset, and they were trading. So even in a big battle, you usually didn't kill an officer unless, obviously, you were about to be killed by an officer.
Yeah.
But they were specifically guerrilla warfare targeting
Yeah.
officers they would be on the road and they would shoot them instead of capturing them. They would literally kill them.
But is that not the degradation of a certain code?
Yeah,
of honor?
That's what I'm saying. But we're saying they had all this. But I think
that's usually how underdogs win. Yeah. When David killed Goliath,
true.
he was breaking the rules. There were sort of like unspoken rules. If a swordsman came out to fight, which I think that's what Goliath would have been considered, your army would send a swordsman, right? So that it was kind of. But so David comes out, and David's not really in the army, so it doesn't. So he's not like officially breaking the rules.
Yeah.
But he comes out, and he's not a swordsman. He's got basically he brings a gun to a knife fight.
Yeah.
Well, or did they bring a knife to a gunfight? You know what I'm saying? Like who's
Goliath?
army? Yeah. Did Goliath? I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Who offered it up? Was it the who was it? The Syrians?
The Philistines.
So the Philistines.
Yeah.
So the Philistines offered up the competition. Who gets to choose the weapon? The Philistines or the Israels?
Well, I mean, I think the Philistines made the.
Well,
came up with the idea,
it was
right?
Goliath going out there every day saying, "Somebody come fight me,"
Yeah, right. So it was the Philistines offering. The
But
deal.
just the way I perceive it, I feel like they agreed upon the terms because I doubt they would have, because they honored the result.
Yeah.
So if it was a dishonorable duel, they wouldn't have honored that result. So I feel like Goliath, in his pride, was like, this puny human can bring anything that he wants. I'll use my sword. If he wants to use a whatever, sure, I'll take him down. So I feel like they honored it in one way or another. But
yeah, well, that's kind of that book that I mentioned last time about Malcolm Gladwell. David and Goliath that's kind of what he gets into, is that underdogs usually win by getting outside of the constructs.
That's cool. I like that.
It's pretty cool. All right, so amendment number 2. We got any other?
The amendment number 1, freedom of speech.
Yeah,
just a real.
Well, that's kind of where I was going to go. Is like I think if you take away number 2,
you can
number 1 goes.
Number 1, yeah.
Like
It's
just like that, it's gone.
Yeah.
Like if you don't have the right to defend yourself, then we're going to dictate what you get to say and don't get to say.
Did you know Adolf Hitler said, if you want to take over a nation, first take away their guns, their citizens' guns.
Oh, I didn't know that, but yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I have been in a country where people did not have freedom of speech. Whenever I went to Iraq, one of the things that's I usually don't like to talk about any of the bad stuff, but one night it was the sun had gone down, if I remember correctly, and or it was going down, and this old guy came to our gate, which was probably half a mile from where I was, but he could he was speaking Arabic or whatever they speak, and our guys couldn't understand him, so we got a translator up there, and basically the old guy led them to an underground prison, and where people were being starved to death, people had been beaten. This old man himself had been beaten, and had been in the prison previously, had scars on his back and all kinds of stuff. And the reason the majority of the people were down there is because they spoke out against Saddam's regime, right? So no freedom of speech. Another example where my company, once we got to Baghdad, where we established our bivouac or whatever you want to call it, there was a family that was kind of living off the land. So we were right beside a water treatment plant. And there was a family that had agreement with the water treatment plant that they could kind of live off the land there that the water treatment plant owned. And so we kind of moved into that area and kind of developed somewhat of a friendship with this family, I guess. But so I want to say they had 7 or 8 sons. A couple of the older ones were in the military. So they were in Saddam's army that we came in and destroyed. But I think they both ran away or whatever. Anyhow, we noticed that one of the younger boys he was missing an ear. And so one day we just decided to ask, like, hey, what happened to his ear? And they said Saddam's regime came in and lined up their boys and started with the oldest and said, will you join the military? And he said no. And they went to the next one and said, will you join the military? He said no. Went to the next one, and however many were old enough, and they all said no. And so they went back to the oldest and said, will you join the military? And he said no, and they went and cut off the ear of the youngest boy to get the oldest brother to join the military. And they said, basically, if you guys who are old enough to join the military don't, we're going to cut off. We're just going to keep mutilating.
Yeah.
And that's what happens, man. This is what I want people to understand. Our Constitution and our amendments protect us from that type of tyranny
Exactly.
and dictatorship. man, I just don't think. I think people, man, to me, it's just crazy to think that your government really has your best interest in mind and heart. No, they don't. Mm-hmm. They have power. They have power in mind. It's what they want.
Yep.
They don't care about you, and you need to stop thinking that they do. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, it's a good way to wrap it up. We can continue next week if you want to.
Well, I think next week we may have a special guest.
Oh, that's right.
My friend Michael Young, who obviously the three of us are kind of in a conservative vacuum here, and so we're going to bring Mike in because Mike is. I'm just going to say Mike's not as conservative as us. I'm not going to speak for him on his behalf. Me and him have had numerous political discussions, and we don't see eye to eye, but we're always friendly, and Mike's a super friendly guy. But we'll introduce him if he makes it in next week if we're able to get him on. You guys got anything to add?
I'm good, man. That was good. That was really good.
Yep, that was pretty good.
All right. We'll see you next time. Have a good week.